Popcorn Junkies. We are reviewing, wait for it, because there's a little part of this is making me kind of laugh and chuckle inside. We're reviewing Fast X, which is the Fast and the Furious film. Yes, the loyalty of family, the family, and it's all about family and how the family unites over cars. Thriller, action, classic genre film that is not usually my cup of tea. But I thought, you know what I thought? There's been 10 of these bloody films. I'm going to go out, I'm going to see one. I'm going to see what I think of this. You know, what is everyone excited about? How have they managed to get to 10? Why are there 10 of these things? There's got to be something I'm missing out on. My only experience of the whole Fast and the Furious franchise has been Hobbs and Shaw. Is Hobbs and Shaw emblematic of the Fast and the Furious? I think I've seen another Fast and Furious. I'm pretty sure I've seen a car fly off the side of a mountain and almost fly. Have we had flying cars? Anyway, so this is Fast X. It's got the usual suspects in there. It's got the usual cast list. You know, at the top of the cast is Vin Diesel. We've also got Jason Momoa in this one as the main antagonist. I'm coming at this not knowing what the entire history is, what the franchise is, what the backstory is. And for that, if you're a Fast fan, shoot me down in flames right now. But most of these films that get made have to have some interest in luring in new punters. They have to assume that not everyone is going to be able to spend time watching the 9 previous films to get to this film. You can watch each of the Indiana Jones films without knowing the earlier ones. You don't enjoy them as much, you don't get as much from them. But my sense, correct me if I'm wrong, with Fast and the Furious is they're not particularly layered. You're kind of going through the similar sort of process each time. It sets the scene that essentially Jason Momoa is a baddie. He wants to blow up Rome with a giant ball bearing or marble. It's a bomb, but it looks like a giant marble. You know, and I like this idea that Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez are, you know, they're family. We are family. They're family. You know, Rita Moreno is in there from West Side Story. You know, they're family. We're family. They're family who've done good. They've been on the bad side, I presume. They've taken some knocks. They've probably run through a few cars, had a few burst tyres, probably popped a few carburetors, had to get a quick fit a few times. You know, they're a family. It's a family, and this is about family. And really, in a sense, what the narrative of this film is that Jason Momoa doesn't have any family. And Jason Momoa is not happy about that. Jason Momoa is a big baby. Jason Momoa is he's a big something in this. He's big. You know, so essentially, so at the beginning of this film, it's established that, you know, Vin Diesel, he's an incredibly, I mean, if you ever play that game, Guess Who? Do you remember the game? 2 games, Guess Who? And there used to be one of the people in Guess Who when you flip them all down and say, is he bald? Is he this? Is he that? Is he this? One of them had a perfectly ovoid head. That's Vin Diesel. And he also reminds me a little bit that if you took the hair from Jason Momoa's chin and put them into one of those, do you remember those things where you'd have the iron filings and you'd have a magnet and you'd move them around, you'd give them a bit of that. Anyway, Vin Diesel, baddie turned good, I guess, you know, salt the earth, all that kind of stuff. He's getting emotional with his son. You know, carburetors talk to him. Carburetors. So there's all this sort of layered romance and sort of, when I say romance, sort of, you know, a deep emotion, and it's all around sort of like, you know, his son driving a car and holding the steering wheel. Carburetors make you talk and all that. Cars help us talk. I think that line actually comes out of Vin Diesel's mouth. I have to confess, quite quickly I found Vin Diesel utterly insufferable. He was so stiff. I was willing him to say, I am Groot, at any point, in any way, shape or form. So this is, it's kind of smash 'em up. Vin Diesel is going to save the day. He needs to utilise the help of his other hit squad of characters, all of whom I think have come from other films, you know, including Tyrese Gibson in there, Kang, who's in there, and Brie Larson is involved too. She seems to be working for the authorities, but she's kind of like she's got one foot in sort of legality and one foot out of illegality. I mean, it's an astonishing cast. Charlize Theron is in there, Brie Larson is in there, Jason Statham turns up at one point, John Cena pops up in there. There's even Helen Mirren and a huge cameo in the end credit sequence that I'll share with you in a little bit. So essentially, they've got Vin Diesel and Co have to head off and rescue Rome. They have to rescue the Vatican. It's like a giant game of pinball. What was that wooden game? Was it called Labyrinth, where you had to kind of move the things and you had to steer ball bearings around things and not let them go down holes? That's your opening scene here in Fast X. It's basically save Rome. And I have to say, I mean, if I'm being, you know, I'm being kind of, I'm ribbing the film here. I mean, it was efficient. It was an efficient action scene. But I have to confess, I don't find, I find all the use of, you know, because obviously CGI is being used in visual effects, special effects and all that kind of stuff. What makes a car chase or something like that for me work is the sense of real physicality in it. The extent to which in shooting it and executing it, you can get that sense of, oh, we're all really in cars and this is really happening. They achieve that a bit in here, but I feel that a lot of it leans on post-production, which kind of removes the kind of authenticity aspect of it. Helen Mirren comes in quite quickly. Helen Mirren, I mean, she has a moment in it. Obviously, she's been threaded throughout the series. I do know that. But my God, Helen Mirren's Cockney accent. Can't take anyone with ya, love. What? Helen? I mean, she sounded like she'd walked straight out of EastEnders. Can't take anyone with ya. When Rome goes, the world goes. So the big baddie, who is the big baddie? The big baddie is Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa has beef. And it strikes me that I was trying to unpack, what is his beef? I mean, he's beefy, but what is his beef? And his beef seems to be that he doesn't have family. He's bitter. He's bitter and twisted, and he's stamping his foot. How he presents is like a giant, frightening, quite sort of debonair Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen, who, for anyone who's not from the UK, is a presenter of a makeover show called Changing Rooms. He looked like Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen all the way through, who'd worked. It's like Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen had gone down the gym and been really working out on his upper muscles, on his upper body. So he's in it. So he's the baddie, and in a sense we have all these scenes of him kind of operating a remote control. It was like giant remote control kind of racing through Rome with a giant ball bearing, kind of, you know, hurtling all over the place. And quite literally, Vin Diesel drives his car at the ball, I think, hits it and flies off down the side of a river. It's like a huge game of marbles with loads of big boys and a giant Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen playing remote control cars. And throughout all of this, Vin Diesel's face is inexpressive. Nothing happens when he asks it to feel an emotion. It's like he goes to he'll be talking and he'll go, say to his right eye, feel something. And nothing happens. There's nothing there. And so some of the kind of theoretically sort of familial relationship, character-driven scenes, like there's one scene where he's walking alongside the car talking to his friend in the garage, they're kind of blocked out in such a pedestrian fashion that you think, wait, have you seen any other type of filmmaking, guys? One of the big problems I found with this film, actually, and this is a major problem with an action film, with these kind of huge budgeted, multi kind of pronged, different parts of the world type films, where often a lot of the action is shot in a lot of these different parts of the world, the film crew or the film production will use different units. You'll get a second unit, you'll get a third unit, first unit, all this kind of stuff. You get different unit crews. So you've got your main director, often you're looking after the first unit, and then you have a second unit director or a third unit director. The idea and the skill of these second units and third units and all the directors that work within them, Spielberg has excellent second unit directors, is that they know how to sort of emulate and create the vision of the director, the master director, the actual director, so that when you slot them in like a puzzle in the edit, they all, they interlink really nicely. Yes, you can see that it's episodic and you can see why a second unit was put on it, but it's still kind of, you can massage it in nicely around the rest of the film. They do it a lot on James Bond and stuff like that. The problem with this film was, there are about 5 different storylines. So you've got the one storyline, which is like the sort of motley band of Fast and the Furious regulars, I'm going to call them. You've got a woman who's so posh and wearing a Michael Jackson jacket from Thriller, for no other reason. You've got the 2 other chaps who, they're quite funny. They're sort of constantly ribbing each other and kind of taking the piss out of each other and what have you. So you've got them. And they meet Pete Davidson, and they're sort of playing around with bits of tech and doing all their sort of stuff. Then you've got this other narrative with Brie Larson. And you're like, what the fuck's Brie Larson doing in here? This is really fucking strange. This sort of quite classy actress. Then Charlize Theron happens. And so you've got Charlize Theron, you've got Brie Larson, you've got that unit, and then you've got the whole Vin Diesel unit, and then you've got Jason Momoa's unit. And so you've got all these kind of different places, and they don't ever get sort of massaged in. You just think, oh, right, okay, so this was the day that they shot this scene with this unit. It doesn't really, none of it really meshes together. There's a moment where one of the characters says that what's happening here, the danger that's being threatened to Rome and to all of us, is an existential threat. If anything, that's an existential threat to cinema. John Cena pops up. Suddenly John Cena is in a scene rescuing Vin Diesel's son. That's right. Yeah, again, I'm sure there are all sorts of backstories as to why this is relevant. Now, you're in a little bit of trouble. I mean, I'm a big John Cena fan, actually. When John Cena brings layered sophistication to the performances in the film. And that's saying something, given that Brie Larson's in there and Charlize Theron's in there. Charlize Theron, I mean, she's a great actress. What's she doing this sort of stuff? So John Cena is in here too, and as I say, he's very funny, he's very witty. Not for long. His unit shoots about 4 scenes, and that's his bit. Good music around his scenes. Nightmares on Wax track in there. There was a scene where Brie Larson comes into a Naples bar. I mean, I've never seen a scene like it. It was about as threatening as the green room, the This Morning green room last week. It was no more threatening than that. It was like cartoon menace. It was like cartoon mobster. Brie Larson walks into the bar and goes, I'm going to buy everyone a drink. The script was full of cliches. It was like nothing. It's like no one making this film has ever been aware of the fact that filmmaking and the language of film has progressed to anywhere. Jason Statham turns up. Big groan there. I mean, I'm always wanting Jason Statham to be funny. I always look at him and think, oh, take the piss out of yourself and I'll really like you. I think he tries to take the piss out of himself, but it's just never funny. So that didn't work either. There was a cameo with Pete Davidson in here. It wasn't funny. Pete Davidson's funny. I watched Bodies again the other night. He's very funny in that. He wasn't funny in this. It just wasn't funny. And then we seem to be back. Then we were in Rio de Janeiro. I mean, this is globe-trotting, this film. It moves around the globe so fast, X, that you just can't keep up with it. And so we're in Rio. How do you denote Rio de Janeiro in a Fast and the Furious film? Lots of bouncing bottoms and tight shorts. Not necessarily something you're unhappy about seeing. But again, cliche city. Jiggy, 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 jiggy. And then Jason Momoa walks in looking like a parrot from Rio. The animated film. But getting beefier and beefier. So Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen now dressed as a parrot from the animated feature Rio. Very strange. I mean, Jason Momoa really went for it. I mean, he did ballet at one point. I mean, he was relishing it. If there's any part of this film to enjoy, it's Jason Momoa pirouetting and having fun and sort of dancing around. Vin Diesel's face remains utterly inexpressive, like a peanut, all the way through. Like a blanched hazelnut, in fact. All the way through. All the way through. Jason Statham couldn't do anything to save it for me towards the end. Charlize Theron brought no layer to it at all. She was thrown around. There was a scene where she was fighting someone, and there was a moment where a piece of tech, which looked like a claw, it was like the claw is our master. 2 moments that were genuinely kind of unsettling or funny. There was I thought a great scene actually with Jason Momoa. I can't remember what he was doing. I think he was talking about his nail varnish. He was he had his hair in pigtails. And he had 2 dead security guards or policemen next to him, and he'd sellotaped up their faces. And so their teeth and their faces were all like that. And there's the sound of flies, and he's just talking to them like a proper psychopath. I think if the film could have gone down that dark alleyway into the darkness of Jason Momoa, and yet, he presents that darkness with all this kind of frills and great long cuffs and Laurence Llewelyn-Bowen sort of, all this kind of stuff. That would have been quite interesting. That could have been good. He could have gone a bit sort of Dean Stockwell from Blue Velvet with it. But so that was an interesting moment. And there was a funny moment in the Jason Statham scene. Why? I mean, I wonder if Jason Statham actually gets to the point where he goes, fucking hell, mate, do I have to do another scene where there's a fucking boxing bag? Every scene he's in is a fucking boxing bag. I mean, talk about it. It's not even that he's been typecast. The set that he acts in becomes typecast. It's like as soon as he's cast in a room, a set goes, fucking hell, it's a Jason Statham scene. We're going to have to fucking hang a boxing bag in here. Anyway, yeah, but there was a sack, there was a case, there was a bag, there was something. And out of it climbed a man just in white pants, who then legged it off. I like the 2 moments of surrealism in this, complete random silliness, I really liked. There was a bridge, this big final denouement bridge scene towards the end, where Jason Momoa at this point looks like a 1980s pimp. Vin Diesel seems to have magicked into a superhero. He manages to lift a car. Though, actually, when I moved a Citroen Diane many years ago, sometimes some cars are quite light to move. Brie Larson lands on a car with a gun, like she's stepped out of a conference, like she's stepped out of a huge conference at the services centre, the Travelodge on the M6. And then we had this final scene where they have to save his son, and Vin Diesel reverses his car out of a massive sort of Vietnam War, I forget what the name of them are, those great big bombers, that you saw in the Vietnam movies where the back would come down and troops would come out. He reverses. I'm going to show you how he reverses. I mean, uber cool. He reversed with the calm and chill of a man reverse parking in the local Lidl car park. It was like this. Bear in mind, he's reversing out of a fast-moving airplane, and he's going to reverse and land onto a moving road. quite cool, but utterly ridiculous. And we ended up then finally in sort of Iceland. It was a random collection of ludicrous locations. Everyone dialed in their performances. Jason Momoa gave you most, but it was very panto, it was very over the top. And then we had one last little flurry in the mid-credit sequence, which was The Rock. The Rock popping in, because of course there's been this huge conflict between The Rock and Vin Diesel. They won't talk, they won't say anything, they won't agree to appear in a film together. So this is a big deal. I'm guessing this is The Rock is a big deal. I think if they're going to do anything, they need to go on a sidebar and perhaps do another Hobbs and Shaw, because I quite enjoyed that. And let's not forget Jason Statham was in there. But I tell you, the film I want to see is the John Cena and the Boy film. I thought every time we cut to them, I liked it. Whoever the unit director on that was, great. The music was good, the shots were good, the performances between him and the boy were good. I mean, I'm saying good, I mean, they weren't even particularly that long, but they felt better and more and fresher than the rest of it. Charlize Theron, Brie Larson, all these other actors, just Helen Mirren. Oh, I can't take anyone with ya. I mean, how could they have all sat at the premiere and looked at this and gone, I'm really proud of this. Thank you. Anyway, if I was to score it, my dear friend Nina, you said you'd give it 0.5. So half of 1 out of 100, 0.5. I think I'll be a bit more generous. I think just for the simple fact of those two scenes, well, the scene with Jason Momoa, the two scenes with Jason Momoa and the one with the guy in a bag and running around with his pants on, I'd probably give it 5 out of 100. 5 out of 100. That's it. Well, because also Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen, I wasn't expecting to see him at the centre of an action film.